Okay, everyone, let's see if we can change some minds tonight. As a particularly passionate and anti-poverty individual, I've been looking forward to talking about the child tax credit payments on the low today. So it's July 15th. It marks the first day of the 6-month schedule for disbursing the advanced monthly payments of the child tax credit. According to the IRS, half of the total credit amount will be paid in advance monthly payments, and individuals will claim the other half when they file their 2021 income tax return. So there's that little loophole there that, like, technically, I think if you get overpaid, you might have to pay something back. So, double, triple check that all your boxes were correctly filled out when you signed up for the child tax credit. For the following months of the year, payments will be made on the 15th of each month, with the exception of next month, where the payments will be made August 13th. I'm not sure why they changed it for August. The payments will be at most $250 or $300, depending on how old the child is. And that's if you qualify for the full amount. So obviously some people's incomes, it will be slightly less. The maximum credit is available to taxpayers with a modified adjusted gross income of $75,000 if you filed single, $1,112,500 if you filed head of the household, and $150,000 if you filed as a married couple. In addition to cutting the number of children living in poverty in America in half, the child tax credit payments are expected to act as an economic boost or stimulus that will mainly be used for food, school supplies, and clothing. Big chain retailers that are expected to see increased profits from the child tax credit payments include Walmart, Target, and Costco. I didn't love that aspect of this story. Most American families will qualify for at least some amount of money from the payments, which I thought is great news, but it also means that most American families are living in a certain income bracket, and that's kind of disappointing. The payments dispersed today will be sent to nearly 39 million families and around 65 million kids. There is no limit on the number of children who can qualify. So if you have 1 kid or 8 kids or, whatever your spiel is, which I think is kind of nice, because big families are expensive and I don't think they should be villainized. And I think we do that too often in America. And I say that as someone who has but 1 child. The IRS will be using people's 2020 tax returns or 2019 if they haven't filed yet to determine who is eligible. And the IRS.gov website has provided a portal for anyone who needs to manage their child tax credit payments, so non-filers and just people with unique situations. This 6-month economic experiment will help families recover from the economic downfall still going on as a result of the global pandemic, and be a window into what a guaranteed or even universal basic income could do for Americans. Critics of the child tax credit payments highlight that it only cuts childhood poverty in half rather than eliminate it altogether. I'm one of those critics. I'm like, yeah, I don't understand why we would half-ass something like eliminating childhood poverty. And it does not address the much-needed economic relief for those without children. While some argue that the payments will be especially helpful to women as they disproportionately make up the majority of single parents, the majority of women living in poverty do not have a dependent. Poverty rate for the demographic that consists of individuals who are between the ages of 18 and 64 and without children has yet to decline since the early 1990s. So there's a huge subset of the country that is just continuously living in poverty, and this new economic boost does nothing for them. Matt, what are your thoughts?
So to your point, that's kind of the bridge, right? Something like UBI would address that. That would address everyone who's kind of not seen in some of these programs or tax credits, things of that nature. But my immediate thought was, goddamn, very well stated by you. Like laid it out pretty well to the point where even like I had a question like, oh, she's addressed it. I was like, oh, she just got addressed. So the biggest thing would be the money going back towards like businesses, things like that. It's part of the problem, right? So like, oh yeah, good for Walmart, who's also like the biggest employer in many states and things like that, right? And we know what they do to small businesses and things of that nature. So it's kind of mind blowing. I remember when I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. I wanted to talk about like again. Not limiting half is a huge thing, especially given what happened this last year. All the people who are slipping into poverty, at risk of slipping into poverty, and it's not over, right? Because we know Republican states especially are starting to cut benefits, right? Things of that nature. So it's a really good start. This is a really good thing. But to your point, the criticism was like, Why there?
Yeah, like 100%. Like if your plan doesn't actually do all like it, like why did it get greenlit? Why is that the final draft? Like we have the means to eliminate it, not only for children but for everyone, and they're choosing not to. And that speaks volumes about why we over the next 6 to 10 years really need to vote in people who are anti-poverty.
And to that end, the people who are anti-poverty aren't the people who've been around, like, right? Because they're not, because like it's not like poverty can't be addressed. It's not like there's like it's not like we don't like it's not like we don't know what can be done, right? Because we've seen examples in other areas of the world of things they've done, small scale things, stuff like that. We even had like pilot programs here in the U.S. and things like that we know can work. So, and I think one of the big things, to your point, is this is going to be a big stepping stone, as you brought up, because we're going to get some real data that you can't dismiss.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious for the viewers and people who will eventually be leaving comments, like, what is your take on the child tax credit payments? Like, obviously, like no one's going to come out and be like, I'm against these, because it's who wants to be anti-family. But I think that there are some fair criticisms that people can make, and I'm just genuinely curious how many people are like myself, where they're just like, yeah, this is amazing, and I fully endorse it, but like it should have been better, and it's not addressing everything.
That's staggering, though. Like, we're talking about what, 40 million families, and that's the thing that to me it's just like, what determines who does and doesn't? Like, it's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, and it's missing some people if they know half of the children will still be left in poverty.
Yeah. So it's missing half the targeted demographic, and then there's still the large demographic that's not touched and has been at the same rate at minimum for 30 years now. So,
Yeah.
And that's not going to get any better after last year. So
it's concerning for them is that it's a lot harder to get government assistance, when you don't have a dependent. It's one reason that people can vilify like the welfare queen, like the single moms. Yeah, like is obviously like a garbage take, but there is truth to the concept that like one, because of like a pride thing, I think people, when they're like single without kids, they're like, oh, government assistance, that's not for me. But also they just don't qualify because our country is very pro-family.
I'm going to say, I don't think our country's pro-family at all. God, we're like anti-family. I think this country is all about like dividing and making people leave the home, because then there's more consumers, more people out buying things. I think most things this country does is about actually removing people from the homes.
Interesting.
Just turning people into consumers. Weddings, everything's just like, family values is just projection.
Yeah, I think, I was like, we like to pretend that we're pro.
Where do our elderly end up?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That statistic about like the poverty line that has not adjusted is not including the elderly, because they independently have their own unique poverty statistics.
When analyzing capitalism versus communism, just in terms of like Soviet Union versus the US and the propaganda going back and forth, and they're this, it's like, look at how capitalism, at least this version of it here that we live in, treats its vulnerable, its young, its elderly, its veterans. We just said that there's what now? So like we're talking like over 100 million. So on July 15th, the first payment from the new expanded child tax credit will be sent to some 39 million families with about 65 million kids. Like 65 million kids. 65 million kids. And that's half.
Yeah, that's like 1 in 6 kids live in poverty in America, in the greatest country in the world.
The greatest country in the world. And this is what we do to our kids. So what would we do to a competing economic structure, dare I ask? Come on, man. So I think my final thoughts would be that this is a really good thing. To me, the biggest point is just we're going to get data, and data is so important. Obviously, the most important thing is going to actually help people in the moment, but not enough.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm just reading the comments to make sure that
oh shit,
there wasn't anything specific to highlight. But I agree with Ron. It's definitely a step in the right direction. Yeah, and I like Grateful Sea Dog's take here, where it's like, yeah, it's tremendous, it's wonderful, but we want it for everyone, not just families. Yeah.
Not everyone thinks like that, though.
If someone was like, hey, you have certain benefits that you're going to get, but you can have less benefits, but it means your neighbor's going to get them too, I'm all for it. Because like what's good for the community is good for all of us. And we can't, I don't like the idea of pitting people like myself who have a dependent against someone like you who does not have a dependent. Like that shouldn't be,
Yeah, but
there should be a
ideally,
policy that benefits both of us.
I agree, but ideally, like it goes both ways too, right? Like, so like you don't want to like neglect someone in my situation. Let's say like you're not, single dude, right? But at the same time, like I understand, like you got a kid, like people got kids, like that's important. Like that's like, because again, like if you buy into like this idea that like we're a society and like we're a country and like we're all kind of like something, right? Like the most important demographics are the kids, the young, like literally, like end of story. So like all of us should be like, it's like the whole, it takes community, man. Like everyone's got to be focusing on the young, man. Like it's like, I don't know. Then it goes back to what I'm saying, like this hyper ass individual society, divide and conquer. So that was POTUS. POTUS for Us had a really good video. And kind of he connect those dots. I was like, keep hammering that point.
Yeah, and with that, I put the link to the portal for anyone who has questions about it.
You had a lot of good links in there, actually.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of anti-poverty. That's kind of my spiel. So this is interesting because I feel like you have a little bit more of an inside window to the previous July 1st strike that I'm not going to have. So I want to hear your weigh in a lot about like why you didn't think that didn't work after I lay out what the plan is with the October 15th strike, which I've researched well. I've even reached out to some of the people who are behind it. And I was told that it's very anonymous. There are no leaders and it's very decentralized. So
I like that.
I like that too. I'm like, I feel bad that we can't connect more one-on-one with them to just be like, yeah, what is this all about? But it definitely feels different than the July 1st one. And to that point, Matt and I have actually talked on the low before to anyone watching right now. And so if you want to check out some of the older episodes about our take on like the July 1st, what happened and what we predicted would happen, there are 2 other episodes on general strikes that we have. And I think Michael Patrick is part of one of them, and he's got some really good takes on it too. So, and to that note too, make sure you're subscribed, people.